on YouTube, Facebook, and our website, justcom.ph. To give a face to the faceless and a voice to the voiceless, that we may recognize Christ in them and hear his story in theirs.
Radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan. The voice of the Blue Eagle, kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay atin sa loob, sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng eskwela. Radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, kawan ni Ignacio, Katipunero, sugod, todo sa kayod, punong at tulong, ipag the Blue Eagle, kalingiting at gigil, blue and white, one big fight. Radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan.
The voice of the Blue Eagle, Radyo Katipunan 87.9.
Radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, radyo, Katipunan. Voice of the Blue Eagle, kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay at tenista, sa loob, sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng eskwela. Radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan. Kawal ni Ignacio, Katipunero, sugod, todo sa kayod, dunong at tulong, lipat na Blue Eagle, kalingiting at gigil, blue and white, one big fight. Radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan.
Baka naman pwede.
Baka naman pwede?
Baka naman pwede.
Mga isyung napapanahon ating pag-usapan.
Baka naman pwede.
Gamit ang mga pananaw mula sa iba't ibang kalinangan.
Baka naman pwede.
Mula sa Institute of Philippine Culture, kami inyong samahan, tayo'y maghuntahan. Dito lang sa
Baka naman pwede.
Tuwing Huwebes, alas 3 ng hapon, dito lang sa Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM.
Magandang hapon sa lahat. Nakikinig kayo ngayon sa Baka Naman Pwede. Isang programa ng Institute of Philippine Culture at ng Radyo Katipunan na naglalayong pagnilay-nilayan ang mga napapanahong issue gamit ang lente ng agham panlipunan o social sciences. Nais din nating mapagkwentuhan ang mga bagay na baka naman pwede nating tingnan muli, pag-ukulan ng pansin at aksyonan. Ako si Claudio ng Development Studies Program at the Department of Sociology and Anthropology at ako ang inyong magiging host sa hapong ito. Noong nakaraang Huwebes, pinagkwentuhan ni na Trixie, Beato at Luz Remban ang kahalagahan ng media sa pagpapakalat ng impormasyon noong panahon ng EDSA Revolution. Nagsimula ang kwentuhan sa pagbabalik tanaw ng ating bisita sa panahon ng martial law kung saan ipinakulong ang rehimen ipinakulong ng rehimen ang mga nasa oposisyon, miyembro ng Constitutional Convention, mga estudyante at mga periodista. At ipinasara din ang mga broadcast stations at newspaper sa bansa, maliban ang Manila Bulletin, Daily Express at Times Journal na kontrolado ng mga Marcos cronies. Kwento ni Luz Remban, noong mga panahong iyon, tuwing pumapasok ang mga journalists, may mga military censor sa kanilang newsroom na nagfi-filter ng kanilang mga sinusulat sa pahayagan. Kailangan daw walang bad news or masamang balitang lalabas tungkol sa gobyerno. Diin din ni Luz mahalagang idokumento ang ganitong mga karanasan ng mga journal para mahayag sa kasalukuyan kung ano ba talaga ang kalagayan ng mga pahayagan noong panahon ng batas militar. Nakakalungkot mang gunitain, tinanggap ng maraming Pilipino ang imposisyon ng batas militar, dala na rin ng kawalan ng alternatibong pagkukunan ng impormasyon at umiiral na represyon. Unti-unti namang umusbong ang mga tinatawag na press o maliliit na pahayagan na naglalabas ng mga balitang hindi inalalathala ng mga Marcos-controlled newspapers gaya ng propaganda ng administrasyon na war hero si Ferdinand Marcos Sr. Ginunita rin ni Luz ang pag-usbong ng mga matatapang na babaeng manunulat na naghahayag ng mga istorya ng represyon at pakikibaka gaya ni Maria Ceres Doyo na nagsulat tungkol kay Maclean Dulag na isang katutubong nanguna sa pagtutol sa pagpapatayo ng Chico Dam sa Kalinga. Mula sa mga ganitong balita, unti-unting nag-build up ang interes ng mga tao sa mga bagay na tinatago ng administrasyon. Umigting din ang pagiging unsettled ng mga tao sa diktatura noong pinatay si Ninoy Aquino at iba pang political developments matapos nito, pagtaas ng presyo ng mga bilihin at flight capital sa bansa hanggang sa paghantong ng mga tao sa People Power Revolution noong 1987. Para sa mga gustong balikan ang mga nakaraang episodes ng Baka Naman Pwede, mangyari lamang na bisitahin ang Facebook page ng Institute of Philippine Culture at ng Radyo Katipunan. Ngayong hapon, bilang panimula sa ating pagdiriwang ng Women's Month at bilang pakikiisa sa malawakang pagsusulong ng gender equality sa bansa, makakasama natin sina Glenn Russel Alejon ng University of the Philippines, Babaylan, at Mark Remington Tan ng Ateneo Department of Sociology and Anthropology para pag-usapan ang SOGIE bill at ang mga hamong kinakaharap ng mga miyembro ng LGBTQIA+ community para sa pagkilala at pagkakapantay-pantay ng mga kasarian. Sa mga manonood natin sa Facebook, pwede po kayong sumali sa aming kwentuhan. Mangyari lamang po na i-type ang inyong mga komento at katanungan sa comment section at babasahin namin ang mga ito sa ating episode mamaya. Ngayon po, hayaan niyo po akong ipakilala ang ating unang bisita, si Russ, isang estudyanteng nag-aaral sa UP Diliman ng kursong BA Araling Pilipino or Philippine Studies. Nakapagtapos din siya ng may karangalan ng senior high school sa Universidad ng Santo Tomas sa ilalim ng programang Humanities and Social Sciences or HUMS. Kamakailan lamang ay siya ang naatasan maging punong Babaylan officer in charge ng UP Babaylan. Bilang isang namumukadkad na advocate, sinisikap ni Russ na makadagdag sa mga positibong panlipunang pagbabago at makamit ang pagkakapantay-pantay at hustisya para sa lahat sa pamamagitan ng pakikilahok sa iba't ibang advokasya tulad na lamang ng paglaban para sa karapatan sa SOGIE, pagpapaunlad ng wikang Filipino at pagpapaunlad ng kabataang Pilipino sa pamamagitan ng dekalidad at accessible na edukasyon. Gayunpaman, walang pinagkaiba si Russ sa ibang mga kabataan na kanyang kaedaran dahil mahilig din siyang magsulat ng tula at maglaro ng volleyball at Genshin Impact. Sa ating mga tagapakinig at manonood, bigyan po natin ng masigabong virtual na palakpakan si Russ Alejon. Welcome sa Baka Naman Pwede, Russ. Kumusta?
Hello po! Hello sa ating lahat, sa lahat ng mga nakikinig. Maraming salamat at inimbitahan niyo ako dito sa Baka Naman Pwede ng Ateneo IPC.
Maraming salamat, Russ. At ang ating susunod na bisita ay isang part-time lecturer sa Department of Sociology and Anthropology ng Ateneo de Manila University. He recently also defended his master's thesis on the online and offline spaces that queer Filipinos inhabit. Sa ating mga tagapakinig at manonood, let's give a round of applause para po kay Rem Tan. Welcome sa Baka Naman Pwede, Rem.
Hi Jess, thank you so much for the invite. So yeah, I hope it's a fruitful discussion.
Alright, so welcome sa Baka Naman Pwede, Russ at Rem, no? At salamat sa pagtanggap ng aming imbitasyon ngayong hapon. So bilang panimula, no? Baka naman pwedeng kwentuhan nyo kami kung ano-ano ang pinagkakaabalahan nyo ngayong mga nakalipas na araw. What keeps you busy these days? Baka pwede nating unahin si Russ.
I think yung madaling sagot naman dun, estudyante ako. So, hindi mawawala sa akin yung papel. Ang papel, ang parang kaibigan ko na. Parang, grabe, ang dami ko nang tinatrabahong papel. Tapos nag-aaral ko ng bagong language kasi may may Spanish classes ako. Tapos kailangan ko pang mag-theorize. So, marami akong isip tungkol sa wika, sa kultura, sa lipunan, and all of that. So, syempre, that's what keeps me, I guess, awake, alive. Kasi, yun, yung buhay estudyante. So, hindi talaga yung mawawala sa akin. So far, yung papel pa talaga.
Maraming salamat, Russ. Na-guilty naman kami dahil pareho kami ni Rem na nagtuturo. Kami ang nagbibigay ng mga papel sa inyong mga estudyante. But it's good to hear na despite the many papers that you have to do, no, binigyan mo kami ng pagkakataon para makausap ka regarding our very important and very relevant topic on SOGIE bill. Mula sa estudyante, pupunta po tayo sa guro. No? Rem, kamusta ka? What keeps you busy these days?
Hello. So, okay, kung si Glenn, puro papers ang sinusulat niya. Ako naman, puro papers ang sinishare ko right now. So, yeah, ang dami kong utang ng papers para sa mga estudyante ko na hindi ko pa nag-grade. So, for the past week, I have been doing mostly checking papers, so many papers. Yeah, also preparing for classes, but most of my time is spent on checking these papers. So yeah. So thankful din ako for this, no? For this break from checking papers. May legitimate excuse ako not to check the papers for a few hours or a few minutes muna, di ba? So yeah.
Salamat Rem, no. But it's good to hear na despite your busy schedules, meron pa rin kayong of course time para sa advocacy natin, no, which is yun ngang gender equality, no. So dumako tayo dun sa ating topic, no, sa talakayan natin, no. We want to talk about the SOGIE bill. So of course, tatanungin natin, no, i-breakdown natin, ano nga bang ibig sabihin natin when we say SOGIE? Anong ibig sabihin ng SOGIE para sa ating mga taga-subaybay? Siguro si Rem? Gusto mong...
Sige,
Yeah.
sige. I can start with SOGIE muna, di ba? So, SOGIE, for those who don't know what the acronym stands for, it stands for Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity, and Expression. And for me, no, the term SOGIE, for me, is an attempt to, at the very least, to expand our current societal understanding of what gender and sexuality is. Because for the longest time, no, for the past few decades, if not centuries, diba, the way that we've thought about gender and sexuality, especially in the Philippines, is that one's gender identity, one's sexual orientation, and the way that one expresses themselves has always been in terms of a binary. And what do I mean by binary, no? So if you're a guy, that means that you're masculine. You express yourself in ways that are macho, diba? Aside from that, since you're a guy, you're also attracted to the opposite sex, to the opposite gender. Kaya binary, diba? There's always an opposite of one and the other. And if you're a woman, you have to be feminine. Kailangan kikay ka. Kailangan mahilig sa mga lalaki, in other words. And because of that, because of this societal understanding of gender as something fixed, in a way, it has also created certain associations with that gender, which comes in. And these associations, no, that a woman, there's such a thing as a perfect man. There's such a thing as a perfect woman. And these associations, for me, at least for society in particular, have become so limiting, so constricting to our lives that we have decided to question this. we have decided to question this whole binary. And that is why we have expanded our understanding of gender and sexuality into more than just sex, gender, and sexuality. We've expanded into the territory of SOGIE. We have, so going more, I don't know, specifically into the terms themselves, no, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression. Aside from that, no, in SOGIE, diba, that's 5 letters. I think more recently, we have now expanded into 7 letters na. So the last 2 letters are sexual characteristics because again, there is a multiplicity of human behavior, plurality of people in this world, diba? Very different in different ways. So let's with them one by one, no? Sexual characteristics, diba? We assume that certain sexual characteristics are something biological, something natural. Like you're a guy and you're a girl. So medically speaking, we hold that to be true. But at the same time, no, as studies have shown, not everybody falls strictly into something male and into something female because with advances in medical technology, we have started to realize that not all guys are built the same and not all girls are built the same. For example, I think there is this famous female athlete who is a runner, a sprinter, I think, and she was banned from running because they found out that she had a very high levels of testosterone in her body, a level of testosterone that even surpassed that of other guys. But she's a biologically born female and such, diba? So medyo it complicates things. Aside from that, no, we have to understand that a significant percentage of the human population is actually born as intersex. And this, statistically speaking, interesting trivia to, no, interesting piece of knowledge to, that if you combine all the people who have intersexual characteristics together, they could actually form a whole country that is big enough to be a top 10 in the world in terms of population. So, which is interesting, you know. So, sexual characteristics pa lang, no, it complicates things. Sexual orientation refers to the gender or the type of person we are attracted to, no. And again, as we have come to realize now, we are attracted to different people, to different identities, different, persons. So again, sexual orientation, now that is tied to gender identity, which refers to how one tends to identify oneself, which in turn is now different from how one expresses themselves. No? So yeah, I think that's a good overview of SOGIE SC at the very least. Because in the Philippines in particular, no, for the longest time, in the Philippine culture, until now, we tend to believe that one's sexual orientation is tied to one's gender identity. Diba nga we have a concept of the bakla here in the Philippines. So the bakla for the Philippines is a male, biologically male person, but inwardly female. Like ang kaluluwa niya, kalooban niya ay babae. And because of that, it is this kalooban, diba? This being female inside that makes that bakla person attracted to male persons or macho guys. And that makes them feminine as well. But as we now know today, diba? Not all bakla are feminine. Not all bakla are flamboyant. There are bakla people who identify as macho, as masculine, as gym bros, diba? So that's something to think about in terms of how SOGIE SC has expanded our and has give us a more nuanced understanding of gender and sexuality in society. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rem. No, napaka comprehensive ng ating background. Russ, do you want to add something?
Siguro kung nakita ko yun sa essay, baka 100 na yun. Like, uno na yun sa akin. Pero, sige, pasimplehin pa natin. Siguro, sa madaling sabi, may 5 questions kang pwedeng itanong to somebody or to yourself even para maintindihan mo yung sinasabi ni Rem na SOGIE SC. SO, sexual orientation, sinong bet mo? Ganun lang kadali. Sinong bet mo? Diba? Pero tandaan natin na ang sexual orientation can be romantic and sexual. Kaya sometimes I see that in TikTok. You know, yung parang, oh, I'm having this point in my life na I feel like I'm emotionally attracted, I'm emotionally romantic towards women, but I feel more sexually attracted to men. So, diba, dun pa lang natin nakikita na yung SO pa lang, diverse na siya in of itself. Sunod, GI. GI, sinetch ka. Sino ka? So, yun yung tanong mo sa sarili mo. Kasi GI concerns kung ano yung tingin mo sa sarili mo. Kung ano yung pananaw mo sa sarili mo. Pwede yan kasing cisgender, pwede yung transgender, pwede yung non-binary, queer, among many others. So, ang tatanungin mo lang lagi sa sarili mo, when you want to learn about your GI is, sinetch ka. Sino ka? Kasi ikaw lang naman yung magde-define ng GI mo. In the same vein, GE, paano pinapakita kung sino ka? So how do you present yourself? Yun yung outwardly expression mo. Doon papasok yung masculine, feminine, androgynous, genderqueer, among other types of gender expression. SC, gaya nung nasabi ni Rem, that's ano yung mga biological components mo, or ano yung kabuuan mo as a biological person. So, pwede mong tanungin kung ano yung, hindi naman siya limited sa kung ano yung nasa pagitan ng hita mo, kasi meron tayong mga chromosomes, may mga XX, may mga XY, others have different variations. And I'm really glad na Rem gave visibility to our intersex siblings, kasi yan yung dun pa lang sa existence ng intersex siblings natin, nakikita natin na in of itself, yung SOGIE natin, yung identity natin diverse. And one thing na gusto kong maintindihan nyo is that SOGIE is just a part of your identity. It's not the be-all, end-all, but it's an integral aspect. Kasi, we're all multifaceted individuals kasi. Pwedeng iba-iba ang pagpapakilala natin sa sarili natin. But at the same time, gusto kong sabihin na ang SOGIE ay isang bagay na personal. It's a personal endeavor. Kasi nalalaman mo lang yung SOGIE mo o natutuklasan mo lang yung SOGIE mo sa sarili mong panahon, sa sarili mong oras, sa sarili mong espasyo. And at the same time, hindi kasi dapat nagmumula lang yan sa'yo at sa'yo lang. Kasi at the end of the day, you only need validation from yourself. You need to affirm yourself. And whether people affirm you, the people around you affirm you or not, sa'yo magmumula yung validation and affirmation. I think SOGIE ko this is part of my identity. So the world has to live with it. And I think siguro yung paborito kong example dito to show, although it's really something na mahirap tanggalin sa sistema, yung konsepto natin ng gaydar. Like, alam ko may mga ganun kasi yung mga, ay, naamoy kita. Pero sadly, that's assuming somebody's SOGIE. And although it's not really the best practice, I won't police somebody for saying na may naamoy sila. Pero at the same time, we have to understand na we cannot assume somebody else's SOGIE as C. Kasi kailangan sila kung komportable silang sabihin sa'yo, then thank you. Kasi pinagkatiwalaan mo ko. Kung hindi, none of your business. Kasi ang SOGIE mo, pansarili mo lang. And at the end of and above all, kahit pansarili siya, pangkolektibo rin siya. Lahat tayo may SOGIE SC Lahat tayo tao, at dahil lahat tayo may bahagi sa atin na may SOGIE. Lahat tayo. So, kaya si Rem or si Jess, may SOGIE sila, kailangan ko bang malaman? Depende sa kanila kung gusto nila o hindi. Pero ako, alam ko sa kanila na may SOGIE sila, so kailangan ko silang irespeto. And that's part of why we lobby for this bigger thing we call the SOGIE SC Equality Bill. O, di ba? Nuts transition ko yon, hindi nyo kaya.
Ang galing. Ikaw na mag-host. Charot. Pero maraming salamat, Ras, na very simple way of defining our SOGIE SC, di ba? Gusto ko yung tanong mo, di ba? SO, di ba? Sinong bet mo? GI, sinetch ka. GE, paano pinapakita kung sino ka, di ba? At SE, ano ang mga biological components mo, no? Gusto ko rin na binanggit mo yung link nung how SOGIE SE could be personal, very individual, but it also has something to do with the collective, di ba? So linking the person, the individual, to the larger historical context, di ba? Parang sociological imagination, Rem. Alam natin yan. At dahil nabanggit ni Ross ang SOGIE Bill, no? Ito na nga ang tanong natin is, ano nga ba ang SOGIE Bill? Ano nga ba ang mga provision na neto, no? So of course, syempre, tulad nga ng binanggit ni Russ kanina, hindi dapat tayong mag-assume. Hindi tayo dapat mag-assume na alam nating lahat kung ano ang laman ng SOGIE bill. So nandito kayong dalawa, no? Kung tatanungin kayo, paano ba ninyo isa-summarize yung laman or provisions ng SOGIE bill para mas maintindihan lalo ng ating mga tagapakinig, no? Siguro dahil kanina si Ram na una, maybe we have Russ first.
Ay, palitan pala. Okay, sige. Madali naman kausap. Ang SOGIE Equality Bill, andun pa lang sa word niya, andun na dun sa title pa lang niya, Equality Bill. Tapos na agad yung usapan, di ba? Tuldok. Hindi pa. Pero ang idea lang kasi talaga ng SOGIE Bill, or at least yung mga provisions niya doon, una, sa SOGIE Bill pa lang tayo makakakita at least ng a standardized and comprehensive legal recognition of SOGIE concept. Ibig sabihin, sa loob ng bill na yon, sa loob ng bill na ipinapanukala sa Kongreso natin, may isang bahagi doon na dinedefine kung ano ba yung sex, ano ba yung gender, ano ba yung gender identity, ano ba yung gender expression, and that to us dito sa atin sa academia, malaking affirmation and validation yun, kasi makikita natin na iintindihan or slowly binubuksan nung pamahalaan yung konsepto niya, like umiipaw na siya dun sa konsepto ng binary, gaya ng sinabi ni Rem na diverse na siya eh. So ibig sabihin, kailangan muna nating i-define, gaya ng ginawa natin, kailangan muna nating i-define yung mga ito para maintindihan natin kung ano nga ba yung mga bagay na, ano yung mga bagay, yung mga gawain na discriminatory. Kasi linking that with the fact na yung SOGIE is an anti-discrimination bill. We achieve equality to non-discrimination. So baka naman pwede nating isipin na ang simula ng pagkakapantay-pantay ay yung hindi pagpapakita na iba-iba tayo o hindi pagdiin na ang dami nating pagkakaiba. Kasi despite our differences, what grounds us all is the fact that we're humans. We're entitled to our rights and kailangan may ginagawa tayo para mapanatili yung mga karapatan natin na na-enjoy nating lahat. So, with that, dahil sinabi ko na nga na ang SOGIE ay anti-discrimination bill, yung pangunahing punto lang talaga ng SOGIE Equality Bill ay sinasabi niya kung ano ba yung mga discriminatory acts. Hindi ka kasi ang SOGIE Equality Bill, in its simplest sense, ay nagsasabi na hindi ka pwedeng mag-commit ng any practices or any sort of activities that may be discriminatory on account of somebody's SOGIE. So hindi pwedeng maging rason ang kasarian ng sexualidad ng isang tao para mang-oppress ka o para mang-discriminate ka. But at the end of the day, wala namang sufficient reason to discriminate at all. Walang sufficient reason to discriminate at all. Pero in this exact bill that we're lobbying, on account of SOGIE, kaya natin dinefine yung SOGIE muna para alam rin ng tao kung ano ba yung SOGIE. Tapos pagkadating natin doon, nililista niya sa may mga section, sa mga kalagitnaan ng mga sections, nililista niya kung ano yung mga types of discriminatory acts or discriminatory practices. Isa na doon yung pag-out sa tao. Yung parang, kasi nga gaya ng sinabi natin, hindi nga natin business kung ano yung ano. So bakit mo i-out yung tao? That's discriminatory kasi you're putting somebody at risk. Kasi hindi naman lahat tayo nakakaintindi pa. Hindi naman sa hindi maintindihan ng lahat, pero hindi pa because it takes a lot of learning and unlearning doon sa pagproseso ng pagtanggap nung something as radical as understanding gender diversity. Something as radical and as beautiful as understanding SOGIE. So hindi ka pwedeng mang-out ng tao, hindi mo rin pwedeng hingiin yung gender ng isang tao para makapasok siya sa isang trabaho, makapasok siya sa isang public space. Hindi at the same time, hindi mo rin pwedeng paalisin yung tao on the basis of their SOGIE. So, kung estudyante ka, hindi ka pwedeng ma-expel sa school on account of your SOGIE. Kung teacher ka, hindi ka pwedeng masisante on account of your SOGIE SC. Kung nangangailangan ka ng medical health care, hindi ka pwedeng i-deny that on the basis of your SOGIE. So, yung punto lang talaga dito is on account of SOGIE SC bill. So, uunahan ko na, myth number 1, ang SOGIE SC bill daw ay marriage equality bill. Sadly, hindi siya at all, hindi siya marriage equality because there really is no provision na nagsasabi na pwede nang magpakasal ang kahit sinong anuman ang kanilang kasarian. Though that's a vision that we have on the vision board, it's really out there. Pero right now, we're trying to pinpoint the fact muna na may discrimination pa. May discrimination pa ng batay sa kasarian ng isang tao, sa pagkakakilanlang pangkasarian ng isang tao. So, kailangan muna nating i-narrow down yon. Kailangan muna nating ipundar yon para sa mga susunod nating hakbang ay hindi na tayo babalik pa dun sa hindi tayo babalik dun sa square one na may discrimination pa pala pero nauna pa yung Kaya natin inuuna siya. Kaya natin inuuna yung SOGIE Equality Bill to equal the playing field, to equal the ground that we have. At pasok na rin doon sa SOGIE SC Bill kung ano ba yung mga redress mechanisms, kung paano ba natin dapat aasikasuhin yung mga kasong may kinalaman sa discrimination on the basis of SOGIE SC. At the same time, tuturuan, nandun din sa bill yung pagsasaad kung ano yung mga programa na could help us, ano yung makakatulong para mas mapataas pa yung kamalayan natin tungkol sa SOGIE SC. Nandun na yung mga social protection programs, yung diversity and inclusion programs and trainings, at syempre mga information education campaign. So, bottom line, baka naman pwedeng tandaan natin na ang SOGIE SC bill ay SOGIE SC Equality Bill. Hindi pa po siya marriage equality bill. At ang SOGIE SC Equality Bill ay isang non-discrimination bill. So wala po tayong, ang goal niya lang right now, ang goal pa lang ng bill ay ma-even and ma-equal out yung ground that we all step in. Na wala dapat ma-oppress, wala dapat may hirapan on account of their SOGIE SC.
Yan. Maraming salamat, Russ. No? Napakagandang introduction sa SOGIE bill. No? Yun nga, tulad ng nabanggit mo, no? It's a way of providing yung binanggit mo kanina, it's providing legal definition kung ano ba talaga yung SOGIE SC as a concept. No? And gusto ko lang tanungin, before I go on to Rem, no? Gusto ko lang tanungin, why does it have to be, kasi you mentioned na it's affirmation, it's validation of SOGIE SC as a concept, no? Bakit sa tingin mo kailangan manggaling iyon sa legal sector or sa mga batas natin? Ano ba yung kahalagahan na binavalidate yung SOGIE SC as a concept ng ating legal sectors, legal experts, no, sa ating gobyerno?
Diba? Napaquiz ako bigla. Pero isang malaking bahagi kung bakit kailangan meron siyang legal recognition and thus nagkakaroon ng academic affirmation is because of the fact na malaki kasi yung reach pambansa kasi yung reach kapag nalilegalize and nalilegally recognize yung mga konsepto natin kasi ibig sabihin may pinanghahawakan na tayo. Ibig sabihin, naintindihan na natin na dahil na sa batas siya, tungkulin na sa bansa na ituro siya at kailangan tungkulin na rin natin bilang mamamayan na maintindihan siya. So, kung isipin natin, malaki yung saklaw ng kapangyarihang nagmumula sa pamahalaan. At sisigundahan naman yan ng kapangyarihan natin bilang mamamayan. So, it has to start from somewhere. And in this case, dahil bill siya, magsisimula siya sa taas pababa. Pero hindi naman ibig sabihin na walang nagsimula sa baba pataas. Kasi nagsimula naman ang SOGIE Equality Bill from consultation. So nagmula yan, umusbong yan mula sa ilalim hindi man sa kailaliman, pero siguro mula sa mismo mga komunidad. So pinag-isipan yan, ikinonsulta yan. So ibig sabihin, yung kung ano yung nakalagay doon sa bill, dumaan yan sa maraming proseso ng pagtatanong, ng pagkukonsulta. So maraming diskurso na umusbong, maraming kaalaman na nabago, na itama, marami ring kaalaman na na-affirm. And so, nung inakyat na natin siya para bumalik pababa, mas ano na siya, mas standardized na siya, mas comprehensive na siya, mas pulido, mas solido na siya. So hindi na natin kailangan pang tanungin kung ay parang malito ha. So uulit ba tayo? Kukonsulta pa ulit tayo? So kaya kailangan yung somehow yung legal recognition ng mga SOGIE SC related concepts sa Pilipinas through the bill. Kasi malaki yung saklaw niya talaga eh. Yun yung kailangan natin eh. Yung reach, yung depth of understanding and yung mandate na kailangan nating malaman at kailangan nating ipaalam.
Maraming salamat, Russ. Napakagandang tanong. Yes, Rem, ano nga ba ang may mga na-miss ba kami na provisions ng bill? Or baka gusto mong sagutin yung why does the affirmation have to come from the legal sphere? Go ahead, Rem.
Sige. Ate, parang hirap naman ng sundan yung discussion na yun dahil sobrang comprehensive at sobrang detailed na. Yung kodigo na dala ko, parang kailangan ko pa ba siya? Parang sabi ba na lahat ng prepare ko eh. But siguro just to reinforce the importance of the question earlier of why it's so important to actually legalize and to have it in our structures na to pass the equality law in the first place because two things regarding the passage of this bill into law. For one thing, our laws, you can think of them as manifestations of what society believes in, right? Because if we as a society believe this is important, then the law is an actual physical structural manifestation of our belief. But at the same time, these laws, we can't forget that these laws that we have formed, they actually shape our behavior, socially speaking, right? They shape our behavior. We adjust the way we live according to these laws. Because again, itong SOGIE bill, there are two things about the bill that I think we discussed a little bit, but I want to hone in on the discussion more specifically with regard to how it is one, punitive, right? Punitive siya. So if you go against the law, you will be charged for it. But something also important about the law that I think merits further discussion is how it is something preventative. In the sense that, according to research, it attempts to incentivize certain actions, such as, especially from a social perspective, it incentivizes that LGBTQ people should be represented properly in media, for example. Because in media, diba, the things we see on television, the things we see on film, in books, in newspapers, the way in which LGBTQ people are portrayed are not always in the best light. And this has been the case for the longest time, What are some examples of this, Siyempre, the first thing that comes to mind na medyo mahit, diba, is misgendering, diba? The use of pronouns, in the case of, I think this happened in the case of Jennifer Laude, the trans woman who was murdered, diba? There were so many news organizations decades ago, years ago, when they portrayed what happened to her, some people were identifying her not as a her, but more as he, diba? So that in itself, right, is something problematic. And because these problematic actions are believed to be normal they believe to be normal because they're portrayed on media, on mainstream media. Because of this, the actions of people are shaped by these portrayals. So in a way, because the SOGIE bill makes this portrayal, this misgendering as something problematic, as something to be avoided, in a way, it shapes our behavior. It will help the passing of the SOGIE equality bill will help normalize equality culturally, not just structurally, but also culturally. So, ilang ma-add ko. Sobrang comprehensive na kasi talaga, sobrang detailed. So, yeah.
Maraming salamat. Maraming salamat, Rem, no? Ang ganda, di ba, na nai-explain ni Ross at ni Rem yung ano ba talaga yung main provision, ano ba yung core na provisions ng SOGIE Equality Bill, no? Pero, di ba, ang ganda nung goal, which is yun nga, equality, nandun na sa title itself, no? But the reality is, it has been delayed. Diba? Right now, the discussions on the bill has been delayed, and it actually has been sitting in the Congress for 23 years now. No, so it's a delay that is even longer than that nung controversial na reproductive health bill. No, and I think it's important to mention here yung mga nagsimula nung ating ang tawag dito, nagsimula nung ating fight for SOGIE FC equality, no? Yung first version nung bill was filed in the 11th Congress by the late Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago and Akbayan Representative Eta Rosales, no? And now it's coming into fruition in the 17th Congress because of the efforts of course, Representative Geraldine Roman. There's also Emeline Aglipay Villar, Representative Emeline Aglipay Villar, and Representative Kaka Bag-aw, no? And of course, Senator Risa Ontiveros in the Senate. No? So, ayun. And then, of course, recently naging laman din siya ng mga news because it's been reverted back to committee level. Dahil ang sabi is kailangan daw ng ating religious sector to be given a chance to participate in the discussions of the passage of the bill. No? So siguro, going back into our line of discussion, ano ba sa tingin niyo yung mga dahilan kung bakit may barriers in terms of passing the bill? No? Ano ba yung mga misconceptions yung meron ng mga tao regarding what the bill provides, no? At ano ba yung iba pang barriers dito, no? Naalala ko lang itong question na to because recently in my class sa gender, no? So I teach sociology of gender, and I asked a group to report on it, and then they showed me a video na parang man on the street interview, asking people, no, to say whether they are pro or against the SOGIE bill, no? And what that video illustrated was that ang dami palang misconceptions regarding the bill. Of course, that hindi lang ordinary people, but people who are actually decision makers have, no, that becomes barriers, no, para sa kanyang pagpasa. No? So ano ba itong mga misconceptions na ito at ano ba yung mga ibang barriers na meron tayo kung bakit hindi na ipapatuloy yung discussion on SOGIE equality. No? Dahil si Ross kanina, we have Rem. Balik tayo kay Rem. Rem, naka-mute ka ata.
Sige. Sorry, nasanay ako. Sige, no. With regard to barriers at the very least, no, to the SOGIE equality bill, I'll talk about things in a more comprehensive manner, no, in a more general sense. There are two things that come to mind for me as being major barriers with regard to the passing of the SOGIE equality bill. The first one for me, most obviously, is the Roman Catholic Church, guys. And why is that? No, why is that? For one thing, in the Philippines, no, according to statistics, according to the Philippine Statistical Authority, 81% of Filipinos are Roman Catholics. Then 5% are Islam, and 2.82% are evangelicals, which are pretty much Christians pa rin, di ba? Christian denomination. And the remaining 11%, mga Agripaya, Iglesia ni Cristo, and others, may mga Christians pa dyan. So, for the most part, no, statistically speaking, we can really say that the majority of Filipinos are Roman Catholic. And aside from that, Filipino culture is highly affected and shaped by Catholicism and Christianity. And this is important. Why? Because according to the church, no, until now, diba, for centuries and until now, for the church, they believe that homosexuality is a sin. Okay, that's a fact. They believe it is a sin. They try to, I don't want to sound but for sure, they believe that homosexuality, things that no, they see it as intrinsically disordered. that it is a problem. You see homosexuality as a sin, you're supposed to actually love the sinner, diba? The homosexual, don't discriminate against them. But in the end, there is still someone who is doing something wrong. So from that sense, we can say that one major barrier to the passing of the social equality bill is the church. So that's one huge barrier. The second huge barrier for me, it's a bigger barrier for me, is culture and media. Culture and media. Because as I mentioned a while ago with regard to the social equality bill, LGBTQ folk have been portrayed as the villains, as the laughing stock, as weak-minded people, as mga desperate people, always wanting to get something, diba, from another person. And this is something that is prevalent in both, not just in both Philippine and the international media, so local and foreign media. This is something very prevalent. This is something that has slowly been changing with the introduction of more queer shows and films, such as BL, diba, for example. But even BL, diba, we could consider it as something problematic. So for me, those are the two major barriers to the passing of social equality bill. The Roman Catholic Church, one big barrier. Another barrier is culture and media. But yeah.
Thank you, Rem. No? Sige, before I give my insights, no? Siguro, Ross, meron ka bang, sabi mo kanina, magugulat kami sa iyong pasabog or isisiwalat. So ano ito?
Actually, nung pinapakinggan ko si Rem, medyo naiba yung take ko on it. Kasi, for me, I think of it na may tatlong balakid to the passage of the SOGIE Equality Bill. For one, I don't necessarily see religion as the problem. I see culture as the problem, gaya nung sinabi ni Rem. I would have to disagree with Rem dun sa sinabi niya na yung Catholic Church in of itself yung biggest stumbling block, because baka pwede kasi naman nating isipin na religion is an ally of equality and equality is a virtue of religion. So ang reality, hindi naman talaga sila nagsasalpukan, dapat nagtutulungan sila. And so what I would suggest, or the way I suggest looking at it, is kung paano natin na-internalize yung religious teachings. Kasi nakwento ko to doon sa nagtanong sa akin na researcher. They were trying to learn more about yung factor nga ng Catholic Church in the passage of the SOGIE Equality Bill. They were asking for a lot of insights from many advocates pa. But I tried to give them a different light to it by saying na it's not necessarily religious affiliation that hinders us from understanding SOGIE bill, but the fact as to how we try to interpret and internalize religion. Kasi at the end of the day, religion is a system of belief. So may paniniwala pa rin naman yung religion. And a part of religion teaches us, like what Rem said, non-discrimination, loving the sinner, is extending your hand to the poor, trying to be very much compassionate, very welcoming, hospitable, di ba? So parang we have to understand na hindi natin kalaban yung church and hindi dapat na-antagonize yung church in the process. Kasi at the end of it all, what perpetuated that sense of homosexuality as a sin is a culture of patriarchy. Kasi yung kultura na embedded doon sa religion, nandun yung culture ng patriarchy is what kept it standing as something not inherently corrupted but being corrupted. Kasi kaya nga tuwang-tuwa ko dun sa news, if you haven't heard, yung the La Iglesia Independiente Church was ordained its first trans woman clergy. So sabi ko, halang galing, di ba? Ang ganda. So ibig sabihin, technically, yung church, natututo siyang mag-evolve, natututo siyang mag-break away from its culture. So, you see there, it's not religion that's the problem. It's the culture within the system. It's the culture within the religion that keeps it from being corrupted. And in the same vein, yung religious internalization natin, paano natin naiintindihan? Kasi kung ang pananaw mo sa turo ni Kristo ay by the book, by the word, maybe you have to assess, have I not been reading between the lines? Diba? Na parang yung mensahe ba ni Jesus nung sinave niya si Mary Magdalene from stoning was, sige, let's be happy about her struggle. Let's keep her from struggling. Let's let her struggle pa. Pero wag niyo lang siyang i-struggle directly. Hindi naman siya ganun eh. It's about extending to women, trying to understand na Mary Magdalene was forced into that due to various socioeconomic socioeconomic reasons during the time of like the Roman invasion ng Jerusalem, di ba? So parang yung culture talaga at saka yung internalization natin. Kasi culture, socialization, acculturation. O, di ba? Pasok na tayo sa sociology. So nandun yung konsepto and that takes a lot of learning and unlearning kasi. Mahirap bitawan yung kulturang kinalakihan natin and like what Ram said, it's a conservative culture. It's a conservative culture brought by religion. Pero it does not mean to say that religion is the one to blame. Kasi yung kultura natin, yung nag-perpetuate ng idea. Kasi culture can be corrective, culture can be destructive. So it's up to our, it's up to our internalization, how we try to understand that. Kasi maiintindihan naman ng isang tao na hindi naman sinabi ng Diyos na porket bakla ako, masusunog na ako pagkapasok ko ng simbahan. Di ba? Parang, of all things, some of the members of the community are actually active servers of the church. Di ba? Isn't that beautiful to think na the church welcomes them and they welcome the church? So bakit hindi natin siya magawa? Yun yung barrier to that. Kailangan nating i-connect yung corrupted culture doon sa personal interpretation and internalization. So papasok doon yung differences in how we approach culture. Kung ano ba tayo, kung ano lang ba yung sinabi, yun lang susundan ko, or ikaw yung type na deviant na parang may mali, kailangan nating itama. Di ba? Parang ganon. At the same vein, hindi natin pwedeng sabihin na walang play ang politics in this. Because undoubtedly, a law will always be it will always be the currency of politics. Law will always be the currency of politics. So, baka naman pwede nating intindihin na pwede nating maintindihan na it's about time that we held our politicians accountable. Kasi representative democracy tayo eh. Representative democracy. So, ibig sabihin, binoto kita, nakaupo ka dyan kasi you have my best interest in mind. At for you to say na, parang hindi yun ha, or baka nagko-confirmation bias lang sila, na, kasi religious affiliation ko ay Catholic, sabi ng mga Catholic, ng Catholic Church leaders na hindi pwede yan. Kahit si Pope Francis na mismo nagsabing homosexuality is not a sin. But my hands are, you just have to really think na yung politics yun behind that eh. Kasi we have, here in the Philippines most especially, nandun pa rin yung thinking natin na the church and state are not, are inseparable. When in fact, we have, the separation of church and state. Pero I don't really find it wrong na certain church groups are certain Catholic groups are invited into the hearings. Pero I feel like I question yung selective choosing. Kasi na-invite na ba anybody from La Independencia Filipinas Church, di ba? Parang sayang naman, di ba? Parang, mabigyan kaya ng pagkakataon makapagsalita yung trans women na the first trans women ordained clergy, di ba? Parang ang nangyayari kasi, self-serving yung nangyaring pagpili dun sa church. And it's sad because the church is painted in a bad light for one. But for another, you see that the church is also a victim of the politics. But it's not to say that the church did not choose to partake in that politics in of itself. So medyo complicated yung network niya, malaki yung malaki yung kailangan natin. Pero we have to understand na at the end of the day, this is still part of politics. And you as somebody involved in the country, may kailangan ka doon. You have to hold your politicians accountable. You have to educate if you can. Educate. Kaya nga may advocates. Kaya nga tayo sa school. Nagpo-produce tayo ng materials sa academe in hopes that somebody might read it. Maybe it will reach our politicians. But the position papers are made every time we campaign precisely because we're trying to rationalize the fact na there is a call because there is inequality, there is discrimination. So kailangan maintindihan natin na yung politika hindi natin maihiwalay doon sa sad reality na 23 years long overdue na yan. At 23 years, I mean, hindi lang naman 23 years tayong nag-suffer, pero 23 years na pinabayaan siya. And it's well about time na maintindihan natin na importante siya, just as every other bill that is out there na that serves the public interest and the public good. And lastly, gaya nung sinabi ni Rem, yung media, kasi may iba pa ring portrayals na mali, but at the same time, kasi the media can be in of itself an echo chamber of disinformation, misinformation. Nandun pa rin yung tanong na sa mga advocates, kailangan pa rin nating lumabas. Hindi pwedeng nakakulong na tayo sa media. At the same time, doon naman, may corrective work pa rin tayo doon. Kasi sadly, there is this thing called network disinformation. So malaki talaga yung network ng disinformation. May somebody controlling from up to down. So kailangan pa rin nating i-correct yun. And yung mga usual na misconceptions na para lang yan sa mga LGBTQIA+ community members, sinabi na nga natin na lahat tayo ay may SOGIE to begin with. At hindi rin naman natin sinasabing ina-attack natin yung religious freedom kasi kailangan rin natin questionin kung ang exercise mo of religion comes at the expense of somebody's rights. Religion pa ba yun? Yun pa ba ang tinuro ng religion sa iyo? So parang kailangan mo na yata mag-confess, kailangan na nating magmuni-muni, magdasal na tayo. Diba? Kasi parang mali yung teaching. And at the same time, kailangan kasi natin siya other people dismiss it on account of the fact na onti lang yung isa-serve niya. But for one, the LGBTQIA+ community is a minority. It's a minority susceptible to discrimination, susceptible to stigma, among many other things. And it's not to say lang naman, gaya ng sinabi ko, hindi lang naman LGBT community yung it's the entire Filipino people as a whole. So kailangan natin maintindihan na it follows the same logic. Nung sinabi ko bang sabihin nating example ay nung sinabi ko bang nagkaroon ng parang kasi yung thinking ay i-define na lang natin yung discrimination tapos pag feel mo na-offend ka, anti-discrimination bill ang ipapakita ko sa'yo. Pero kailangan kasi nating i-narrow down kasi what is not written cannot be used to your defense, 'di ba? Parang ganun nga as the court of law says it to be. Parang kaya nga may anti-bullying tayo to zero in on the issue of bullying. Kaya tayo may anti-sexual harassment to zero in on sexual harassment. Kaya tayo may Safe Spaces Act kasi to zero in on the threat to safe spaces, be it private or public. So ganun lang rin yung idea na anti-discrimination bill siya pero we're zeroing in on the fact na you cannot discriminate on the basis of somebody's SOGIE.
Maraming salamat. Napaka-comprehensive naman po ni Ma'am. Ayan, meron sabi ng Radyo Katipunan, no? Very articulate. And I'm glad na banggit mo yun kanina yung sinabi mong hindi naman dapat kaaway yung religion, di ba? Or yung Roman Catholic Church. No? And you mentioned the term religious freedom, which yun din naman yung argument actually ng mga pro-SOGIE bill, di ba? Na parang they want, ang pinanghahawakan nila is that dapat parang part nung kanilang argument is religious freedom kasi para sa individual liberties, 'di ba? So dapat kasangga natin, 'di ba? Ang religion para sa ating pinaglalaban na gender equality, no, or anti-discrimination. Pero meron nga yung sinasabi na weaponizing religious freedom, which is yung binanggit ni Russ kanina na parang paano ba natin ini-interpret ang religious freedom? 'di ba? At nagiging double-edged sword siya kumbaga, na parang nagagamit siya as a weapon to undermine the pro SOGIE advocates, 'di ba? And ginagamit siya of course ng mga tao na gustong ayaw ipasa yung SOGIE bill, no? So yon, yes, ang ganda ng articulation natin, no? And ayun, dahil hanggang 3 lang tayo, time check, it's 2:56, naging masaya yata ang ating kwentuhan, no? Yung last kong tanong is, of course, because si Russ is part of the studentry, di ba? And Rem is part of the teaching community, di ba? Ano ba yung, parang kung ina-narrow down natin, yung ano bang magagawa natin para suportahan or para matulungan na maipasa ang SOGIE bill? Paano ba natin siya, paano ba tayo magiging useful dun sa fight para ipasa itong SOGIE bill bilang mga estudyante, bilang mga guro, at bilang mga researchers? So siguro bilang estudyante kay Russ, no, bilang guro at researcher kay Rem, no. Doon muna tayo sa guro kay Rem. No, Rem, ano nga ba? Paano nga ba natin matutulungan, no, na maipasa itong SOGIE bill?
Sige. So for me, no, from the point of view of an educator, two things, no. First is, of course, awareness. And the second is refining the issue. Because for one thing, awareness, we're bringing things into light, diba? From the shadows, diba? From things that are not that are not being talked about. Because when something is out of sight, diba? It's out of mind. We don't care about it. We don't think about it. That's not being brought up. But now that's being brought to the forefront, diba? In front of us. We see it. It's there. It's an issue. What do we do, diba? We have to do something about it. It can't just be like a white elephant, diba? Andun lang, di pag-usapan. So that's the first and the most important thing that an educator that we should do, diba? Bring it up as a real problem that needs to be solved, diba? Hindi not can be solved, diba? It really has to be solved because it affects everyone. Because like sabi ni Glenn kanina, diba? SOGIE, diba? SOGIE affects all of us. Everybody has sexual orientation, has gender identity, has gender expression, has sexual characteristics, right? So that's the first thing, awareness. And the second thing, as I mentioned, is refining the issue, refining the question further. Because, syempre, itong bill na to, it's very comprehensive, it's very detailed for sure. But sometimes, there are things that are being missed out. And that is the purview of, for me, education, diba? We have the freedom to talk about things in a way that is free of judgment, diba? At least that's what I try to do in the classroom, diba? To talk about discuss about complex topics, expanding the question, expanding who it affects, trying to understand certain scenarios, how it may not be as effective as it should be. And when we give students that space, that freedom to discuss things from their own point of view, we allow the question to be refined further. We allow the issue to be more intricate, diba? To be more nuanced. And since our understanding of the issue is now more nuanced, more intricate, we can now arrange and we can now design our solutions to be just as nuanced, just as precise, so that they can be more effective. So, ayun lang. So,
yes, maraming salamat, Rem, no? Mula sa isang guro, no? Punta naman tayo kay Ross na isang estudyante. Paano nga ba natin hihikayatin yung mga fellow students natin para maging supporters of the SOGIE bill?
For me, I guess 3 words lang. Matuto, magturo, ituro. Syempre kailangan mo matuto kasi estudyante ka, magsisimula ka sa sarili mo. So, kailangan mo matuto. So, umattend ng GSTs, ng Gender Sensitivity Training, mag-take up ng courses. Marami namang courses na nagtuturo ng gender And that's a really big evolution of the academy itself. Next, kailangan mong magturo rin. Kailangan dalhin mo yung natutunan natin sa loob ng pamantasan, ng universidad, palabas. Kahit sa simpleng pagkakausap lang sa mga friends mo, uy bakla, ito daw pala yung SOGIE, ate mo, ito daw pala yung discrimination. Diba? But at the same time, kailangan pa rin nating ituro in a sense na we have to direct it where we want it to be. So kailangan kung nasa academe tayo, marami sa amin sa Babaylan naglalobby pa rin for better implementation of transgender gender non-conforming policies, like yung pagtatawag by the transgender individuals' live name, paggamit ng mga pronouns as much as possible. So, naituturo mo kasi where, and from there, kapag naituro mo where, somehow nakikita na, ay, parang kung mayroong SOGIE SC Equality Bill, mas mapapadali yung trabaho natin. Mas mapapadali yung, kasi may tumutulong sa atin, may kaagapay tayo. So, baka naman pwede nating simulan sa pagkatuto, tapos ilalabas natin sa pagtuturo at later on, maituturo na natin yung daan kung saan natin gusto. And we want a SOGIE equal society. Yung may pagtanaw ka sa kasarian, may pagtanaw ka sa pagkakapantay-pantay ng lahat.
Ang ganda. Ano yun? Matuto, ituro, ano yung last?
Matuto, magturo,
Magturo,
ituro.
ituro. Yan, ang ganda. Di ba? Napaka-simpleng slogan, no? Tama yun, no? And from a structural level, kasi kayo, di ba, parang from an individual point of view na bilang guro, bilang estudyante, yung education system, di ba, from a structural level, tulad ng nabanggit ni Russ, parang responsibilidad din na magkaroon na sa curriculum ng mga progressive changes na parang magkaroon ng mga courses that would further interrogate para dito sa mga these types of issues, para magkaroon ng space where they can be talked about and discussed, no? And of course, in a participative manner, di ba? Para matuto yung ating mga estudyante, no? At yung nabanggit din ni Ross na yung GSTs, di ba? Importante rin i-implement siya on organization level across all sectors, mapa-estudyante, mapa-teacher, mapa-staff, di ba, mga mapa-maintenance, dapat meron tayong input towards gender sensitivity, no? So parang little ways to change our to change our day-to-day life in the school, no? Of course towards gender equality. No? So maraming salamat, Ross at Rem. Nako, overtime tayo, pero siguro hingi lang ako ng konting pabaon sa inyo, no? Yung fill in the blanks lang natin na baka naman pwedeng blank, no? So patungkol sa pagpasa ng SOGIE bill, no? Ano yung pwede nating maidugtong doon sa ating sentence? Baka naman pwedeng blank. Siguro si Ross muna?
Baka naman pwedeng ipantay na natin ang lupang tinutungtungan. Baka pwede namang panahon na para ipasa ang SOGIE SC Equality Bill.
Maraming salamat, Ross. Rem, ikaw naman, baka naman pwedeng blank.
Baka pwede naman ASAP. It doesn't have to be perfect. Basta meron na, di ba? We can just polish it later. Pero it's important to have it now.
Baka naman pwedeng rush, di ba? Ang ating, or i-certify as urgent, di ba? Ang ating SOGIE bill, ang pag-discuss sa ating SOGIE bill, no? So maraming salamat, Russ at Rem, no? At sa ating mga tagapakinig, no? Dito na po nagtatapos ang ating episode ngayong hapon sa Baka Naman Pwede. At baka naman pwedeng i-like nyo kami sa Facebook, no? Ang Institute of Philippine Culture, ang UP Babaylan, at ang Ateneo Sociology and Anthropology Department at ang Development Studies Program. At abangan ninyo po ang aming ibang mga announcements at events, no? Hanggang sa susunod na episode po natin, ako po si Jessie Claudio mula sa DS program, sa DSA po at sa IPC, no? Patuloy po tayong mag-ingat at lagi po nating tandaan na kung may gustong maunawaan, baka naman pwede nating pag-usapan. Maraming salamat po at magandang hapon.
Baka naman pwede.
Baka naman pwede.
Baka naman pwede.
Mga isyung napapanahon ating pag-usapan.
Baka naman pwede.
Gamit ang mga pananaw mula sa iba't ibang kalinangan.
Baka naman pwede.
Mula sa Institute of Philippine Culture, kami inyong samahan, tayo'y maghuntahan. Dito lang sa
Baka naman pwede.
Tuwing Huwebes, alas 3 ng hapon, dito lang sa Radyo Katipunan, 87.9 FM.
This is Radio Katipunan 87.9 FM, the voice of the Blue Eagle.
Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan. The voice of the Blue Eagle, kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak.